can feel a bit confusing at times, maybe especially when you first encounter it. Maybe over time, hopefully it becomes less confusing. Linda called this process of how we have these interview conversations mysterious. And I've come to think of mysterious as that which I do not yet understand, and perhaps will never understand, but perhaps not like something else that's completely, other people may understand it, or I may learn to understand it. So one purpose of my talk today is, and maybe the ones that Linda and I are going to be giving in the days to follow, is to really make these interview conversations a bit less mysterious. I'm saying a bit less mysterious because I hope they will remain somewhat mysterious, because the other side of the continuum is if they don't remain somewhat mysterious, they might become rote. And that is certainly not what we want. So let's talk about that word interview. Now, I thought about dropping it at one point, seriously thought about dropping it. And then I thought, no, wait a minute. The two parts of that word are just right. Together we view, interview, together we view your meditation. And so we put a tilde between inter and view. So if you see it written somewhere, that might look weird. It actually is weird. But it was some way to sort of differentiate it from the way we often think of the word interview. So that word was adapted from Vipassana, other Vipassana retreats that I've gone on. There was always group interviews and usually individual interviews. But it's also so much else in our life. You know, we probably all had job interviews and interviewed for various things. So in my experience, and I'm going to make some assumptions here, and please, if this is not your experience, you know, don't think whatever, discount it, but this is my experience. So the way I was interviewed when I was practicing Vipassana, which was for about 25 years or more, was closely tied to the instructions that were given in the meditation. How did I do with the instruction? And somehow this Dharma talk, when I was writing, leaned right into a particular experience that I had had with my teacher at the time, actually my first teacher, someone who like taught me a lot, but also did some things that were not very helpful. So in this particular individual interview, I was very excited. I asked for an individual interview. I was very excited about a particular state of mind that I'd experienced at my meditation. And yeah, now I can see I attributed it incorrectly to a very specific development I heard about. Now, she didn't address what I wanted to talk about. Instead, she asked me these very specific questions about how I was perceiving my breath at the throat. Here it is, over 25 years ago, and I remember it so clearly. My math might be a little off with the 225s, but, you know, a long time ago. This was traumatic. I mean, in the smaller sense of the word, the small t. You know, I was already teaching at this point, and to have what I thought was a development overlooked and in this way seemed painfully invalidating. And not only that, like I didn't get it. Like, what was my experience then? Was it all wrong? Was I all wrong? And what about the fact that I actually didn't perceive much at my throat? That must be a problem, huh? At least that's how I took it up. So I'm only telling this story because it illustrates a fundamental about how we interview. And even the sort of the stage we set before the interview conversation, because we suggest you can speak about whatever you'd like from your meditation, and sometimes even specifically suggest you talk about what interests you. And that's what we do. We ask questions about what interests you. Not all our questions go that direction, but that is one fundamental direction. And we may not, you know, frame it that way or say, oh, well, because this interests you. No, you may not even say this interests you, but we can sort of pick up a little spark from you, a spark of being interested. We don't presume that we know better than you do about what you should be interested in, what is of value to you, what is the next thing that'll take you down some kind of positive dharmic path. But that's how I took up that teacher's questioning that long time ago. I assumed that it was better, wiser, more developed to be aware of the sensations at my throat than the state of mind I was interested in. Now I believe this was a disservice in many ways. It really undermined finding my own path. I wish he had directed the conversation towards what I wanted to talk about, though perhaps gently and subtly steering me away from some of my misconceptions. And by the way, now I know, well, I sort of maybe even knew at the time, my misconception had a basis in competition with what another student had said about her meditation. So, following what interests you, that's our direction. But we also, it's not 100%. We also gently steer you away from what is not a positive direction for you. Carefully, very carefully, and in an easygoing and collaborative way. And so now as I reflect back on this situation so long ago, I really question, what if this teacher had, again, lightly questioned me about my erroneous views, but even before she did that, actually was really interested in this experience. I was really interested. And then perhaps this is what I would have wanted. You know, hindsight is 20/20. We learn what we learn. But what if she had just very gently then, after showing interest in it and meeting me collaboratively with what I wanted to talk about, what if she had helped me see some of the conditions that had fueled this view? And in this way, helped me learn more about conditionality, not as a concept, but as a lived experience happening to me right then and there. And like I already said, I see now that the dominant condition was this atmosphere of competition around the retreatants, especially those of us who are already teaching. Perhaps if I had reflected on this, it would have stemmed my tendency to compete. Perhaps I would have seen more about my strong desire to be a very good student. Perhaps I would have learned more about what fuels this tendency of my mind to proliferate in this way. Who knows? I'm proliferating in some ways about what could have been. And I think I would have felt better about myself had it gone that way. Felt more metta towards myself. Felt friendlier towards myself. I'll never know how it could have been. Though, right now, I feel somewhat certain that reflecting upon this experience, writing this Dharma talk, and reflecting about it through the lens of the Dharma and how we do the interview conversations has been helpful for me. And I hope the same is true for you. So we are going to meditate.